or go for a walk with steady path. You know that?
Where's my iPad?
I think that's right. There we go. Okay, so we're all learning in this new world, all the different steps with the technology. So welcome. As you know, I'm Ms. Hiedemann, and I'm joined by Brigette Fuentes today, and we are exploring the question, is it remotely possible to make a difference during the coronavirus? The short answer is yes. However, in many cases, how we engage with the community will look different than how it did before. And in some ways, it won't look different at all. But we hope that you leave today's forum with new ideas for how to be empowered and inspired during these trying times. And so our agenda is threefold. I'm going to start by talking about different ways to engage with the community. For students, how the HB community is continuing to be a civic treasure, and then also how we can make a difference both through service, through activism, and through philanthropy. After I finish this overview, Brigitte's going to speak about the innovative platform that she has designed, and we hope that you'll not only be inspired by what she's doing, but possibly be able to participate in the work she's doing as well. And then we'll open up the forum for questions from all of you, and maybe just larger discussion about where the world might be heading with the coronavirus and how it might be impacting making a difference, the nonprofit sector, and things like that. So to begin with, I'm sure you're all feeling pretty powerless in many ways right now. We're stuck at home. We can't really go outside very often, other than we can go outside, but we can't go to other places as much as we used to. We're not connecting as a community in person, whether it's the school community, your religious community, the larger Cleveland community. So we're all feeling really powerless in many ways. But I'm really heartened to see how many different ways there are to connect with the community and the growing list that's happening as the more time that we stay at home. So there is some good news in all of this really difficult time that we're going through. So I'm going to start by thinking about community service, and then talk about philanthropy, and then follow that up with some just advice about activism. And actually, Ms. McMillan's really good with activism too, so I might have her chime in as well. But in terms of community service, as trite as this sounds, in some ways, you're already doing a really important service right now by staying home and socially distancing. This is one of those instances where doing something for the greater good of the community over the needs of one person is really what we're doing. And you feel powerless, you feel passive because we're just staying home. But by staying home, we're actually all doing a lot of good. And so, pat yourself on the back for that. It feels like we're not doing as much as we could be by staying home. But in many ways, we're keeping a lot of people healthy who maybe wouldn't be healthy otherwise. So this is a really interesting moment to think of sort of the relationship of the individual to the community in terms of what we're doing as an action of staying home, but it also feels like an inaction at the same time. But while you're home, I mean, most people are feeling like they maybe have a little bit more time than normally because we don't have commute times, and maybe doing a little bit less schoolwork than we had in the past. So while we have all this, a little bit of extra time, we might also be able to engage in some service in different capacities. So I'm going to actually open up, if my technology allows me to, I'm going to open up a document that is now available to all of you on MyHB. And some of you, I think I've shared this document with, but we have a document on, let's see, I can open this document up here. Oh, here we go. So on MyHB, there's a document that's called COVID-19 Make a Difference, and it is now housed in this new platform on MyHB under groups for the HB centers. And this document is over here on the right for opportunities that are happening off campus. So you can take a look at that on your own time as well. But I'm going to share some of the ways in which you can engage in service through the ideas that are on this document. We'll hold off on hearing the ideas from Brigette because she's going to share those with you. But I'm going to just highlight some of these opportunities, and then you can come back later on and take a look at them in more depth. So if you're 16 and meet the health and weight and other guidelines, you can still continue to give blood. That would be something you would be doing in person, obviously, rather than virtually, but that's a great way to continue being civically engaged. But otherwise, all of the other things here are not so age specific. And so I'm just going to highlight some of them. I'm going to start with this section here. Caring Cubs, Shake Our Neighbors, and Dream Catchers are really important ways to engage with senior citizens who are among the most isolated people right now because they're the most vulnerable for getting sick. So they're more likely to be staying home more consistently than anybody else. So you can write letters, send them videos, send them your artwork, things like that. And it's just a really nice way to connect with somebody, even if you're not going to hear back from them, but just to hear from them, to show your concern for them during this time. I also wanted to highlight the Be My Eyes app, which I learned about from Sarah Garea, who helped compile this list. And it's a great opportunity to help people who are vision impaired with things like reading instructions, finding out if something in their home has passed the expiration date and things like that. And the cool thing about this opportunity is that you can continue to be remotely involved with this app even after we are allowed to go back out in the community and be social again, because this need will continue. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to to surgical masks is something some of you have maybe already been doing, but there's a great need for surgical masks, and the store Pins and Needles will actually you can drop your mask off there and they will deliver them to hospitals. You probably have to know more about sewing than I do to do that, but it's a great way to really help the frontline hospital workers because there's such a need for surgical equipment. Saturday Tutoring and UP Chief are two virtual tutoring opportunities that we have, and we have a particularly strong connection with Saturday Tutoring, but it's really exciting to think about how you can continue providing academic support for students in the community who are working from home. They may not have the same support from their families that you might have, and so they're looking for 1 hour per week, a commitment for you to work with a student, and typically HB students work with students in grades 1 through 4. So it'd be a lot of fun and also a really nice way to help students stay on track academically. And I'm just going to share one other opportunity that's a great family activity across age groups, especially in light of yesterday being Earth Day. Litter patrol is something you can do any time of year. We're all allowed to go outside as long as we keep our social distance. So think about going outside and with some gloves and trash bags and pick up trash. And we've done that a fair amount in my household, and the neighbors have thanked us. So there's definitely, people are really grateful for it. And there's certain times of year, like right after winter, as well as after trash days, when sometimes just trash inadvertently leaves the trash cans, not because people are littering. And so when that happens, it's great to just stroll through the neighborhood and make everything look a little bit better and keep all that trash from going into the water streams and so on. So those are some of the ways in which you can be involved with service. And I hope later on in our conversation, you can maybe share some other ideas that you might have. I'm also going to talk a little bit about donating money. And I know sometimes people feel like, if there's a choice between giving money versus donating time, that donating time might feel more personal. And I think that's often true, that donating time can feel more personal, but donating money during big crises like what we're going through can actually sometimes have a bigger impact. And so there's a couple different ways to look at it. This document has a number of organizations that you can support financially. Some of them are organizations working on the front lines of the health response to coronavirus. Some are working more with families in need, like the Greater Cleveland Food Bank or IJ. And so you could give money to any of these causes and know that you're helping out with something bigger than what we're normally used to facing as a community. But I also would urge you to consider donating to other nonprofits that may have no connection at all to the coronavirus, but they are probably hurting financially right now because either these organizations maybe have had to cancel some of their programming that brings in revenue, or they have perhaps had to perhaps had to stop having volunteers come in, and that they might have to have staff time be used to be taking care of what used to be done by volunteers. So even an organization that seems completely unrelated to the coronavirus can be a great cause to be supporting as well during this time. And any amount, I mean, I know most of you don't have jobs, so any amount of donations is really appreciated, whether it's $5, $10, $20. It doesn't have to be a huge donation by any stretch of the imagination. So those are some of the ways that you can make a difference through donating time, and then donating money. And then I just also wanted to put a shout out for activism. If there's a cause that you're really passionate about, even if it's nothing to do with the coronavirus, this is a great time to think about, well, how can I become better educated about this cause? And then what's the best platform for raising awareness or drawing attention to your cause? So perhaps you take the issue you're really excited about, do some research, and then take some time to either write a letter to the editor of the newspaper, some kind of social media platform, or calling an elected official to tell that official what you think about this issue and what should be done about it. So these are all things that you can do from home, and something like activism is something that you can keep doing even after the coronavirus ends. But this is a great time to to practice that kind of skill, since we have the time and there aren't as many in-person actions that we can take right now. Lastly, before I turn this over to Brigette, I wanted to also share some things that are happening at HB, or have been happening since since we stopped coming to school in person. And first of all, the school donated of the personal protective equipment that we have. So we made those resources available to the larger community, to hospitals and so forth. Second of all, Carnival is continuing, and so I really encourage you all to participate in as many ways as you can to support Girls with Soul, whether you're running or walking virtually, or actually walking and running, but then virtually submitting your time, whether you give a donation to Carnival or participate in other ways. And something else that I'm really proud of that's been going on is that the HB Parents Association has really generously decided to take the money that would have been spent towards Blazer Breakfast and donate it to nonprofits. And they've asked students and student leaders in each division to donate, to select the cause that they want to support for that money. So I think that's just a really super cool way that the HBPA is looking out for the larger community right now. And then of course things like Grow is still finishing its proposal review and making donations through the grant proposal process, and also making a donation through our contingency fund from the Dress Down Fund. We are going to be supporting one of the local organizations on the list that you just saw as a way to show our support for addressing the coronavirus. So that is kind of a big picture overview of what we've been doing and how you can get involved. And like I said, I hope you will chime in after Brigette speaks with some of the things you may have been doing or questions you might have. But I'm going to turn it over to Brigette so she can talk about the innovative work she's been doing.
All right, so hi everyone. So yes, my name is Brigette and I'm an 11th grader, if you didn't know. So over the past few weeks, I started a Facebook page in which I share videos highlighting different activities, such as musical performances, sports videos, art exhibitions, and many more. So I'm just gonna share my screen, and there we go. So this is like the Facebook page that I have. So as I'm sure many of you have experienced, lots of volunteering opportunities are being postponed or canceled due to COVID-19. And like for me personally, the Cleveland Clinic has canceled all volunteering research opportunities, even over the summer. And I normally perform like with my violin or piano at nursing homes, but because of the whole social isolation thing, I can't do that anymore. But I still wanted a way to give back to my community. And so that's why I created COVID Connect. So the purpose of COVID Connect is to obviously connect people by sharing the talent of our community. So I first started off with like a violin performance. I'll just play a little bit. So yeah, and then let's see. And then I realized that I wanted to bring more activities to the public. So I also figured out a way to do an online art exhibition. So I'll show that right here. So basically you can just input artwork and then move around as if it was a regular art exhibition. And then you can even zoom in on a special artwork that you like. And this exhibition featured the artwork of one of my friends, but of course it could be anyone's. So far I've featured 2 guests in my videos, and of course I would love to feature the amazing talent that we have in the HP community. So if you have anything you'd like to show to the world, just like simply send a video to Ms. Hiedemann and I, and we'll try our best to include it. And the Facebook account can be found at COVID2 Connect. And I can share my screen again to show that's the account name right there. So if you check it out and give us some likes, that would be great. And if you have any questions, just let me know. And thanks for listening.
So could you tell us a little bit about like how you're growing an audience and how you're, I think initially you were hoping to reach out to senior citizens. So can you talk a little bit about how you're growing your audience? And
yeah, so first, I think the easiest way to start, at least for me, was to start out with my family. So what I did was just like contact my aunts and uncles, and like I even contacted one of my aunts who's in a nursing home right now, and she was able to like give me some advice or talk to me about stuff. So that's obviously the easiest way. But then of course, just going off from there, just talking with people that you know, and just let them know that you're doing this, because once they know, especially if they know you, there's no reason why they shouldn't support something like that.
right. Cool.
So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, so one thing we can all do is if you have some talents that you would like to showcase online, you can connect with Brigette and perhaps send her a video. And it can also be things like, I imagine things like cooking or crafts and things, as well as music and art. So, yeah. So would anyone like to speak up about sort of how you're trying to make a difference during the coronavirus, what some of the actions you've been taking are, or what looks interesting of choices that we've just shared? Anyone like to speak up? So just remember to unmute as you speak.
So yesterday I signed up for the Saturday Tutoring online program a couple weeks ago, and yesterday was my first session, and I really liked it. I worked with a little 3rd grade boy, and it was really cool to see how you could incorporate technology with being able to help someone who's maybe having a hard time during coronavirus with learning and everything. And it was really cool because we navigated screen sharing, and it actually ended up really working for the tutoring session, and we had a lot of fun. And I'm working again with him tonight and in future weeks, I think, for the next month on Thursday. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I really enjoyed my experience.
That's awesome. So Abby, you will get to work with the same student the whole time?
Yeah.
Which is
So
really
that's really nice, because we'll be able to build a connection hopefully over the next month or so.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak up? Anyone else? I think several other people in this group signed up for Saturday Tutoring. Has anyone else had a chance to start with Saturday Tutoring? Well, Ms. McMillan, I'm going to put you on the spot. You have mentioned in the past how important you think activism is, and I'm wondering if you might add anything to what I said about activism, in particular in this time period.
Yeah, so I do work with a group called Citizens Climate Lobby, which is obviously focused on climate change activism. And it's actually been a pretty interesting time. I really appreciated your comments, Ms. Hiedemann, about taking time right now to do some learning about the issues that you're worried about. Citizens Climate Lobby is a national organization, so they provide advice to the national level, has been providing advice to all of the local chapters about how to approach activism at this moment in time. And they've actually suggested to us that we be pretty cautious about the way we might reach out to elected officials and writing letters to the editor, in order to not come across as being insensitive to the sort of crisis at hand as we talk about the thing that we're concerned about. So they've been advising that people take this time to really build up their sort of background information, their skills, and not necessarily completely avoid reaching out, but to do it really in a sensitive way that says like, hey, I'm really grateful for all of this work that you're doing at this moment in time. You know, thank you, thank you, thank you. And like, here's this other thing that I hope you just don't forget about right now, right? So making sure that you come across as sort of being aware enough to know that there's like this big thing going on, and maybe climate change isn't front and center for a lot of officials or for people who are in the community right now, right? Like a letter to the editor that was just about climate change might come across, I mean, other than like maybe yesterday as Earth Day, right, 50th anniversary, maybe then it was okay, but in a broader context, like paying attention to how you frame it right now, I think is really important. But I also loved your idea, Ms. Hiedemann, about the trash pickup. That's something I've been doing as I walk around the neighborhood with my dog. And actually the Doan Brook Watershed Partnership, which you guys know Doan Brook runs right through HP's campus, they're running like a litter pickup, not competition, but just like they're having people log all of the litter that they're picking up in their neighborhoods and like what kinds of stuff they're collecting, just as like a data collection and a way to sort of share the collective impact of what people are doing on their own.
Great, thank you. And sometimes when we do litter patrol in my household, sometimes I feel like it's a little bit like the starfish story where, you know, the person goes on the beach and there are all these starfish. Some of you have probably heard the story. There are all these starfish that have kind of been hit and have left the water and are on the beach and can't get back into the water. And this man keeps throwing one fish after another into the water. And someone says, well, why are you doing that? There should continue to be more and more starfish. And he says, well, I helped that one, didn't I? And I think that that story kind of relates to litter patrol. Some of it is definitely people who are not being kind to the environment, but some of it is very accidental with like trash pickup and things like that. And so it really is something that while the problem will persist, you're not solving the problem long term. It really does. I think it is a really important problem to think about in a way to be a good steward of the community you live in. So so I do actually really recommend it. And it is, believe it or not, it is kind of fun. And you can kind of see what you pick up and so forth. So so I think it's a great thing for anyone to do. And, you know, I see a lot of families out taking walks this time of year, especially as the weather's going to start getting better. So one thing you can do with your family and really have a good time at the same time and get some fresh air. Anyone else have suggestions or thoughts or any other ideas that we haven't talked about that would be interesting ways to connect with the community? Bridget, you look like you.
I think like with just going on with yours, the starfish story, it's just the fact that it's like the same principle. I think with like reaching out to your relatives, friends that you haven't talked to for a long time. It's like for me, I started like contacting a lot of people that I haven't spoken to in a long time and just talk about them, ask them how they're doing. And I think that can really make a difference for someone, especially in this period of isolation.
Yeah, I actually really agree with that. And at the beginning, before school started, when we were home every day, I actually tried to reach out to about 5 people every day that were sort of in my friend or family network to see how they were doing, because we don't have those usual connections that we would have before. So actually, those are some cool things you can do, even though they're not maybe what we would typically call direct service. But so I think that's a great idea as well.
Sorry.
But I'm curious, I mean, I think a couple of other things that come to mind that we can maybe talk about as a group are like how the coronavirus might be affecting how we volunteer, even when we kind of resume normal lives again. I mean, normal might look different to us in 6 months than it did 6 weeks ago, but you know, how is this going to impact making a difference even after we do start resuming being back in public in more ways? And so I'm curious if anyone's thought about that, like what might be different for all of us. Everyone in this group here is pretty invested in community engagement. So when you think about that, like what do you think the impact might be on how you're going to be volunteering in maybe September, October?
I think that things are going to be a lot more cautious once this is over. I feel as though a lot of stuff, it won't be how it was before. and a lot of things will be taken into account now that we've been away from each other for so long, and that, because the spread of germs and the way that it is going down right now and everything is closed and how fast it happened, especially. And I feel as though everything won't be as open as it used to be.
So I know you've spent a lot of time, Demetriana, tutoring students. So do you, how do you think that's going to, like something like tutoring or working in a nursing home, like how do you see that impacted?
I think as far as schools, like being open to outsiders, as open as they were when I was tutoring at CLA, I feel like it won't be, I think it will be a select amount of students that can tutor, and then they'll have a select amount of kids that can get tutored. And same thing with nursing homes, especially because of the senior citizens, they're more prone to it. I feel as though it'll be like selective, just like the schools.
Right, and perhaps there'll be some kind of wellness test that you have to take before you're allowed to volunteer. But I mean, those are both examples of service where you can't really do your service if you're more than 6 feet apart from the person. And so thinking about how we engage in volunteerism and, in a couple of months or 6 months or whenever the time comes, it could be really, really different. And perhaps the populations that have the biggest need to have that human connection are going to have to sort of reimagine how they do that. So. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
I think kind of more generally, even if like the way specifically that we see community service and working together as a community changes, I think that it's more important now than ever, because it really takes a global pandemic for people to realize that we don't live in our own bubbles. And so there are a lot of big organizations that have been changing the way they interact with their communities. And I think people are starting to realize that they actually need to have a bigger impact in that. So I think that definitely the way that we see it might change, but I think it'll still be there.
So can you think of examples? You said some of the organizations have made some changes. What are some of those changes that you've seen?
Yeah, so the Cleveland Food Bank has, and I don't remember, there was one more organization, but basically they've been doing meals, but they're kind of pick up and drop off, and they've been using school buses to deliver them, and so just they're still doing that, and more people are donating money to them now. And so those things still exist, but the way never before did they use school buses to try to deliver meals. So I think it's a good I don't know, it's a good time to realize that there are other ways that we can still be connected and still help out.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's great. Anyone else?
I wanted to add to what Judy was saying. I feel like also after this is over, I feel like it should be a moment of recognition. A lot more people can see how volunteering and helping out can be more beneficial than before. They can be more appreciative of the point that volunteering is as open as it is, and how many different ways you can volunteer and help out. So hopefully this encourages a lot of people that didn't do as much volunteer to do more, and give a helping hand.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see if there's going to be a hunger for more engagement with the community after we are allowed to head back out more freely. If people are going to sort of be really excited to get more involved, or if people are going to feel a little hesitant because we've been kind of held back for so long. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But hopefully people will see how much need there is in the community, as well as worldwide. There's a lot of evidence that that hunger is growing right now as we're dealing with the coronavirus, and worldwide hunger. And in the United States, the economic repercussions of so many people losing jobs is another reality as well, for both people needing services, but also how that's going to impact nonprofits. So I guess my other question is something. Oh, go ahead, Ms. McMillan.
Oh, I just had two thoughts. One is not directly service related, but I think there's a layer of, I don't know, I'm thinking about how much appreciation people are gaining for the frontline workers right now, and people that we don't necessarily appreciate, right? Like people who work in grocery stores and gas stations. And so I'm hoping, like wishful, that that appreciation continues and that we just continue, like interact with a different level of respect for each other. So that's the like not service related one. But it feels somehow connected to all of this conversation. But, you know, Abby, I was really interested and excited to hear about your experience doing the tutoring, because I did one day of that Saturday tutoring as a chaperone for HB. And I think it's really cool that that opportunity is now available not just on Saturdays for students, and that you get to have an ongoing relationship with the same student, which I think wasn't the case necessarily in the past.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like curious, thinking forward, if that potential will continue forward out of this, that like maybe they'll allow the remote engagement for students and the ongoing engagement that's not just Saturdays. So maybe there are some new things that people are figuring out, like, hey, this actually works, we could do it differently, and provide more access even and more opportunity for involvement through these other platforms. It's different, but it maybe it's this and the other, right? Like it's both in the future.
Yeah, that's always been one of the things I've wished for with Saturday tutoring. We've worked with them probably for 8 or 10 years now, and I've always wished that you could work with the same student week in and week out, and they've just never been set up that way. And a lot of other tutoring organizations are, so I'm hoping that maybe this might be like a silver lining of this difficult time we're in, is that recognizing that ongoing relationship makes such a difference with the learning process, because you can build trust with somebody and get to know the person. Because we all know that learning is much easier to happen when you trust the person who's teaching you or helping you. So I'm hoping that will be a silver lining. So my daughter has decided to join the program, as you can see. She's making her cameo appearance. I think it would be also interesting to think about, you know, how this coronavirus might impact nonprofits, organizations throughout the United States in some ways as well. Like, will we see a lot of nonprofits maybe have to combine with other organizations? Will they perhaps have to shut down because they're not going to have nearly the same revenue? So that's something else that's on my mind. I don't know if anyone's thought about that as well, but sort of how the financial impact of the coronavirus, we think about it in terms of jobs and the overall economy, but I think it's going to be a very real impact for nonprofits as well. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. We have a very quiet group today.
And my thought is like basically what you just said. You know, my mom works on the board of some nonprofits, and she's worried. They're worried about losing all the revenue from their programs and what it's going to mean, and their ability to sort of stay afloat, pay their employees, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have anything more to add than that.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really real concern. It's the, you know, nonprofits are part of our economy in many of the same ways that businesses are. So how that plays out is going to be really, really interesting. Well, before we close, we're almost done, but if anyone has ideas, maybe we can bring it back to the work that Brigitte's doing. If anyone has recommendations or ideas of how they might support the Facebook page she's created, and either through audience generation or videos or other ways to connect with people through Facebook. It would be great to hear some suggestions or ideas.
So I'm totally not a social media user. However, I'm curious, you know, because I think lots of older folks aren't social media users. Have you thought about actually calling different nursing homes and saying, hey, I'm doing this thing, and what's the best way for us to reach your population? Like, just like literally cold calling and asking them, like, how do I do this better? Or how do we reach your population?
So I've like connected with like UH, and they haven't called me. We haven't set up a time to call, but I think like one of the main issues for them is like the security issue, because they don't want to give like private information of their patients for obvious reasons. And so I think that was one thing we were talking about before, is just like how to have a way. Initially, I wanted to like call each patient and like talk to them, but of course that requires a lot of barriers, like security, things that you have to go through. And so that's why I decided to make like a public page so that everyone can reach it. But I haven't really talked too much about exactly how to get everyone to have access to it. Like the thing about Facebook that I found that I really like, the fact that you can still watch some of the posts without having an account. So I know I do remember like contacting some of my relatives or something, and I'd be like, oh, I have this Facebook page, and they're like, oh, I don't have a Facebook account. But I think there's like a misconception that you need to have an account to be able to like watch or view the post. So I think that's something that I just have to make clear across to people, especially when I contact different like nursing homes or hospitals, that you're still able to watch this even though you may not have an account.
Maybe
Hey, Bridget.
sorry.
Bridget, my name is Louise Scott. I work at HB. I have enjoyed the presentation today, and as you were talking, I had an idea where Governor DeWine at 2 o'clock every day features students and other people that are doing wonderful and amazing creative things. And often they're willing to publicize. And I think what you're doing is absolutely wonderful and creative and will benefit a lot of people. I wonder if you just maybe reach out somehow to his office, share your idea, share the link. You never know, it might go further than you'd ever imagine. But congratulations to you and to all the girls and all that you're doing. You make me feel so proud to be part of the HB community, and keep it going. You make me so proud.
Thank you so much. I didn't know about that, so I for sure will be sending emails soon.
Maybe also because there's a problem of security with like elderly populations in nursing homes, reach out to like senior caretakers and like caretaking organizations, because then maybe this is a little more streamlined, because the people who have access to the Facebook account can just be the caretakers, and they're just the ones like showing the so it's like less invasive, I guess. Easier to do. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Thanks.
Those are great suggestions. Does anyone have, I know looking at the audience, there are some really talented people in this room. If you have suggestions of or ideas of how you might share some of your talents as dancers and singers and so on, I think this is a really interesting platform to participate in. So, consider, you don't have to necessarily volunteer yourself right now, but consider thinking about, if there's a video you already have of yourself performing, perhaps you could share it with Brigette, and she might be able to she could post it on the Facebook page as well. So thank you. We are almost out of time. I think we have about 5 more minutes. So I would just love to open it up one more time. If you've been wanting to say something but feeling a little hesitant, this is a great chance to unmute and ask a question, share something you've been doing. Otherwise, I think we're just about at the end of our time, but I want to give one more chance for people to speak up. You've been a great audience. I can tell you've been really attentive. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Brigette, before we close?
Just to say thank you all for listening and supporting as well.
Yeah.
And all your advice were great. So.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending, and look forward to seeing you in person again sometime soon. Okay, bye-bye.